The conference room at the police station smelled like stale coffee and fluorescent lighting. I sat perfectly still in my navy cardigan and pearl earrings, hands folded on the table, while my daughter-in-law Melissa's face drained of color across from me. "Mrs. Harrison," Detective Chen said, sliding a glossy photograph across the table. "Can you confirm this is your vehicle?" Melissa's eyes darted to the image, my silver Honda Accord, its undercarriage exposed on a hydraulic lift. Even from the photograph, the severed brake line was obvious, cut 3/4 through and leaking fluid onto the garage floor. "That's my car," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. It hadn't shaken in 3 weeks, not since the moment Melissa had handed me those keys with that particular smile. "And can you confirm," Detective Chen continued, his gaze shifting to Melissa, "that your daughter-in-law was the last person to drive this vehicle before you?" Melissa's lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit, leaned forward. "My client doesn't have to." "Yes," Melissa interrupted, her voice sharp. She lifted her chin, defiant. "I borrowed Margaret's car 2 days before. So what? The brakes were fine when I returned it." Detective Chen opened a manila folder. Inside was a stack of papers that made Melissa's confident expression flicker. "Mrs. Harrison," he said, looking at me with something like respect, "would you like to explain to everyone here why you didn't drive your car that day?" I met Melissa's eyes across the table. 3 weeks ago, she'd handed me those keys and said, "The grocery store run is the least you can do, Margaret. After everything we've done for you." Her smile had been saccharine sweet, but her eyes had been cold as January ice. And I'd known. In that moment, I'd simply known. "Because," I said softly, "I had it inspected first." The color didn't just drain from Melissa's face, it evacuated. Her lawyer's pen clattered to the table. They had no idea what was coming. "My name is Margaret Harrison, and for 43 years, I built a life that was supposed to mean something. Richard and I married young. I was barely 22, fresh out of secretarial school, and he was 25, ambitious and full of dreams about opening his own business. We had one son, David, and I poured everything into making our home a sanctuary. Richard worked 70-hour weeks building his commercial real estate firm from nothing. I managed everything else, the household, the finances, our son's education, the elderly parents on both sides. When David was 12, Richard had his first heart attack. The doctors said stress. I took over the business bookkeeping from our dining room table, keeping the company afloat while Richard recovered. No one knew. To the outside world, Richard Harrison was the self-made man. I was just his wife. David grew up watching me sacrifice. He saw me defer my own dreams. I'd wanted to get my accounting degree, maybe teach, to support his father's ambitions. "You're the backbone of this family, Mom," he used to tell me, hugging me tight after particularly hard weeks. Then he met Melissa. She was beautiful in that calculated way, honey blonde highlights, expensive athleisure wear, a bright smile that never quite reached her eyes. She worked in marketing at a tech startup and made sure everyone knew she was a boss babe and career-driven. David was smitten. They married within a year. At the wedding, I watched Melissa's eyes scan the guests, calculating net worth like a spreadsheet. When she looked at me, her smile was polite, distant. I was just the mother-in-law, an obstacle to her real prize. Richard died 2 years later, another massive heart attack at 67. The funeral was standing room only. His business partners spoke about his vision, his determination. No one mentioned the woman who'd kept the books for 15 years, who'd held everything together during his recovery, who'd sacrificed her own ambitions so his could flourish. At the will reading, David inherited the business, worth nearly $2 million. I inherited the house and a modest life insurance policy. It was what we'd agreed on. David would build on his father's legacy. I'd live comfortably in our family home. But Melissa had other plans started small. 6 months after Richard's funeral, Melissa suggested I might be lonely in such a big house. "You should downsize, Margaret. All these stairs. What if you fall?" I was 64 and walked 3 miles every morning. I hadn't fallen in 40 years. Then David started missing our weekly dinners. "Melissa's really stressed with her promotion," he'd explain, apologetic. "She needs me home." The promotion, I learned from Facebook, involved Melissa leaving her job to become a full-time lifestyle influencer. She posed in expensive workout clothes, promoting diet teas and jewelry. David paid for everything. "Mom," David said one Sunday when he finally visited alone, "Melissa thinks maybe you could help us out. Just temporarily. We're buying a bigger house, she needs an office for content creation, and the down payment is more than we expected." "How much?" I asked carefully. $50,000. "Just a loan. We'll pay you back." I'd helped them with $20,000 for their wedding. They'd never paid it back. But this was my son, and he looked so tired. "Let me think about it," I said. That night, Melissa called. "No pleasantries. David's too polite to say it, but we need that money, Margaret. You're sitting on a $800,000 house while your son struggles. What kind of mother does that?" "Melissa," I said quietly, "I need that security. It's all I have." "Security?" She laughed, sharp and brittle. "You mean selfishness. Fine. Don't help us. But don't expect David to keep playing the dutiful son when you won't even help your own family." She hung up before I could respond. David's visits stopped completely after that. My calls went to voicemail. When I finally drove to their house, Melissa answered the door in designer loungewear, her phone in hand, recording. "Margaret," she said loudly, projecting for the camera, "I asked you not to come by unannounced. We have boundaries. I just wanted to see David. David doesn't want to see you right now. You've made your priorities clear." She smiled at the camera, victimized and patient. "We're focusing on our own family now." The door closed in my face. I stood on their porch, 64 years old, and felt something inside me crack. But I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I went home and did something I should have done years ago. I hired a lawyer and started documenting everything. 3 months later, Melissa called. "Margaret." Her voice was honey-sweet again. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. Why don't you come over for dinner? Let's mend fences." Everything in me said trap, but she was holding my son hostage. So I agreed. Dinner was excruciating. Melissa performed warmth like an Olympic sport, touching my arm, calling me mom, serving me wine I didn't drink. David looked relieved, hopeful even. "I'm so glad we're doing this," he said. "I've missed you, Mom." "I've missed you too, sweetheart." Melissa smiled. "Family is everything, isn't it? And Margaret, about the loan, we've dropped it. We found another solution." She squeezed David's hand. "Actually, we were hoping you'd consider something else." Here it was. "My car's been acting up," she continued. "David's worried about me driving it. And you barely drive yours, what is it, a 2019 Accord? Practically new. Would you consider lending it to me for a few weeks while mine's in the shop? Just temporarily?" David looked at me hopefully. "It would really help us out, Mom." I looked at my son, my beautiful boy who I'd raised to be kind, and saw how expertly Melissa had learned to manipulate that kindness. "Of course," I said. "Take it as long as you need." Melissa's smile widened. "You're such a blessing, Margaret." 2 days later, she returned the car. Dropped the keys in my hand outside the grocery store I'd called to say I needed to shop and said, "Thanks for lending it to me. The grocery run is the least you can do, Margaret. After everything we've done for you." The words were wrong. We hadn't discussed grocery shopping. Her eyes were too bright, too satisfied. And in that moment, I knew. I drove straight to my mechanic, Charlie, who'd been servicing our family's cars for 20 years. "Margaret," he greeted me warmly. "What brings you in?" "Charlie," I said carefully, "I need you to do a complete safety inspection. Especially the brakes. And I need you to document everything with photographs and a written report." He looked at me strangely, but nodded. "Give me an hour." I waited in his office, drinking terrible coffee, my heart hammering. When Charlie emerged, his face was grim. "Margaret, you need to see this." On the hydraulic lift, my car's undercarriage was exposed. Charlie pointed to the brake line, a clean cut, 3/4 through. "Someone tampered with this." If you'd driven it, especially on the highway, you'd have lost brake pressure. Complete failure. My hands started shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Can you prove it was deliberate? I asked. The cut's too clean to be wear and tear. This was done with tools. Margaret, he looked at me seriously, this is attempted murder. You need to call the police. Not yet, I said. First, I need you to document everything. Photographs from every angle. A detailed written report. Date and time stamp everything. Margaret. Charlie, please. Trust me. He did. He gave me copies of everything, plus a sworn statement. Then I called my lawyer, Patricia, who'd been helping me document Melissa's behavior. Patricia, I need you to file everything we've been building. And I need you to prepare something else. What are we doing, Margaret? We're setting a trap. For 3 weeks, I played the fool perfectly. I called Melissa, voice trembling. I'm so sorry to bother you, but my car's acting strange. The brakes feel soft. I'm scared to drive it. That's terrible, Margaret. Concern dripped from her voice like poisoned honey. You should definitely get that checked. Old cars, you know. Things wear out. Could you give me a ride to the mechanic tomorrow? Oh, I wish I could, but I'm so busy. Why don't you just drive carefully? I'm sure it's fine. I could almost hear her smile through the phone. I had Charlie quietly repair the brake line and redocument everything. Then I waited. Melissa's next move came exactly as Patricia predicted. She told David I'd been acting erratic, forgetting things, maybe showing signs of dementia. She suggested I shouldn't be living alone. Maybe I should sell the house, move into assisted living. She'd found a perfect facility. The proceeds from my house would cover the fees, with plenty left over for them to manage on my behalf. She's worried about you, Mom, David said when he finally called. She said you forgot about dinner twice last week. I'd never agreed to dinner. Maybe she's right, I said softly, playing my part. Maybe I can't handle things anymore. 2 days later, I received a notice. Melissa had filed for emergency conservatorship, claiming I was mentally incompetent and a danger to myself. David's signature was on the paperwork too. That's when I sprung the trap. Patricia filed countersuit, including my complete medical records showing perfect cognitive health, my financial records showing meticulous management, and character witness statements from my doctor, my neighbors, and Charlie. Plus one additional item, the police report I'd filed, with photographic evidence and Charlie's sworn statement about the brake sabotage. The court ordered all parties to appear. But I did something else first. I called a family meeting. Now, in that police conference room, watching Melissa's confident expression crumble, I felt something like peace. Detective Chen continued, Mrs. Harrison had her vehicle inspected immediately after you returned it. The brake line was cut 3/4 through, enough to cause complete failure at speed. She provided photographic evidence, a mechanic's sworn statement, and a timeline proving you were the last person with access to the vehicle. Melissa's lawyer was scribbling frantically. This is circumstantial. There's also this. Detective Chen pulled out another document. Mrs. Harrison's home security camera captured you entering her garage the day before you returned the car. The timestamp shows you were inside for 47 minutes. Care to explain what you were doing in your mother-in-law's garage for 47 minutes? Melissa's face went white. I was just organizing. She asked me to. I didn't, I said quietly. And the camera shows you with tools. David, sitting next to his wife, looked like he might be sick. Mom, this can't be real. Melissa wouldn't. I turned to my son. She filed for conservatorship, David. She forged concerns about my mental health, got you to sign paperwork claiming I was incompetent, also she could access my home and my finances. The brake sabotage was backup if I died, you'd inherit, and she'd have control of everything. That's insane. Melissa shrieked. David, tell them, I love you, I love our family. Then explain the brake line, Detective Chen said flatly. Silence crashed into the room like a physical weight. Melissa tried rage first. This is discrimination. You're all just threatened by a successful woman who knows her worth. Detective Chen remained unmoved. Mrs. Peterson, you're being charged with attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. You have the right to remain silent. David. Melissa grabbed his arm. Tell them I didn't, you know me. But David pulled away, his face crumpling. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Tears streamed down his face. She told me you were confused, that you'd forgotten conversations, that you were becoming paranoid. I signed everything she put in front of me, he continued, voice breaking. She said it was to protect you, to help you, that would make sure you were taken care of. You tried to steal my life, I said softly. Not angry. Just factual. Both of you. No. David stood, frantic. Mom, I thought I was helping. She said you'd be safer, that you'd thanked her for organizing the garage, that you'd agreed to everything. I want to see your phone, Detective Chen said to Melissa. Her eyes went sharp, calculating. Not without a warrant. We have one. He nodded to another officer, who collected her phone. Within an hour, the digital forensics team found her deleted searches, how to cut brake lines without getting caught, symptoms of dementia in elderly women, emergency conservatorship requirements, and most damning, a series of messages to a private number detailing the old bat's house value and how long until the insurance payout. The other number belonged to Melissa's boyfriend, a fitness influencer she'd been seeing for 6 months. David's face went through every stage of grief simultaneously. You cheated on me, he whispered. Melissa's mask finally shattered. You were supposed to be successful. Your father was worth $2 million and you're barely making 6 figures. I gave up my career for you. You quit your job to pose with Diet Tea. I was building a brand. She was screaming now, all pretense gone. And your mother was sitting on a fortune doing nothing. She's old. She's alone. That house should be ours. Everything should be ours. So you tried to kill her, Detective Chen said. Melissa went quiet, suddenly realizing what she'd admitted. I want a lawyer, she finally said. You have one. Detective Chen gestured to the young man in the suit, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. David sank into his chair, head in his hands. Mom. God, Mom, what have I done? I looked at my son, my beautiful boy who'd gotten lost somewhere along the way, and felt my heart break for both of us. You believed someone you loved, I said quietly. That's not a crime, David. But you stopped listening to me. You stopped trusting me. And that. I paused. That I don't know how to forgive yet. Melissa was arrested that day. The charges were extensive: attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, filing false conservatorship claims. Her bail was set at $500,000. Her parents, horrified and broke, couldn't pay it. Neither could David. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the mechanic's report, the deleted search history, the messages to her boyfriend detailing her plan. Her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She refused, convinced she could talk her way out of it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified calmly, showing the jury the photographs of my brake line, explaining how Melissa had borrowed the car, how she'd handed me the keys with that particular smile. I showed them the timeline of her manipulation, the isolation, the false dementia claims, the conservatorship filing. David testified too, broken and ashamed. He admitted he'd signed paperwork without reading it, that he'd believed Melissa's lies about my declining health because she was his wife and he'd trusted her. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Melissa received 15 years. David filed for divorce before sentencing. He sold their house, the one they'd needed my money to buy, and paid me back the $20,000 from their wedding. Plus interest. It doesn't fix anything, he said when he brought me the check. I know it doesn't. But Mom. I'm so sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. We were standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made him breakfast every morning for 18 years, where I'd helped him with homework, where I'd held him when his father died. I need time, I said. I need to trust you again. And I don't know how long that will take. He nodded, tears streaming. However long it takes. I'll wait. I'll prove it to you. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if I have to. Then start by getting therapy, I said gently. Real therapy. Figure out how you got here. How you let someone manipulate you into almost losing your mother. I will. I promise. He kept that promise. I know because he emails me updates every week. He doesn't ask to visit. He just tells me what he's learning, how he's changing, how he's rebuilding himself. Maybe someday, I'll be ready to see him again. Maybe. 6 months after the trial, I did something I'd dreamed about for 45 years. I enrolled in the State University accounting program. At 65 years old, I walked into my first college class in 4 decades, sat down among students young enough to be my grandchildren, and opened my textbook. The professor, a woman in her 50s, smiled at me. Welcome back, she said, like she knew exactly what it meant for me to be there. I'm getting my degree. The one I deferred so Richard could build his business. The one I sacrificed for everyone else's dreams. I sold the big house, too many memories, and I didn't need the space. I bought a small cottage with a garden, 30 minutes from campus. My neighbor is a retired librarian named Susan who brings me seedlings and doesn't ask questions about my past. My classmates call me Grandma Margaret with affection, not condescension. They ask me to study with them, value my perspective. One student, a single mother working 2 jobs, broke down in my car after class one day. I don't know how you do it, she cried. Going back to school after everything. How do you stay strong? I thought about that question. About break lines and betrayal, about 43 years of sacrifice, about the moment I'd known Melissa wanted me dead and I'd chosen to save myself. You stay strong, I said, by remembering that your life belongs to you. Not to people who hurt you. Not to people who underestimate you. You. Your life is yours. She hugged me, fierce and grateful. Last week, I got my first perfect score on an accounting exam. The professor wrote on my paper, "Exceptional work, Margaret. You have a gift for this." I cried in my car for 20 minutes. Not sad tears. Proud ones. I thought I'd lost everything when Richard died, when David chose Melissa, when I realized my own daughter-in-law had tried to kill me. I thought I'd spent 43 years building a life that meant nothing. But I was wrong. I didn't lose everything. I lost people who'd taken me for granted, who'd seen me as an obstacle or a bank account, who'd never valued what I sacrificed. And in losing them, I gained something I'd never really had before, myself. My freedom. My education. My future. I'm 65 years old, and I'm just getting started. Melissa's in prison, serving 15 years for attempting to murder me over a house and an inheritance. David's rebuilding himself, learning to be a better man. Maybe one day I'll forgive him. Maybe not. But either way, I'm not waiting for anyone's approval anymore. I'm not waiting for anyone's permission to live. I spent 43 years being the backbone, the support, the sacrifice. I held everyone else up while they climbed, and when they reached the top, they looked down and saw me as something to step over. Now I'm done holding anyone up but myself. And you know what? I'm standing taller than I ever did before.